Every man who volunteered to carry the radio heard the same number. 5. Instructors in training classrooms across the United States wrote it on the chalkboard. 5 seconds. That was how long a radio telephone operator was expected to survive once a firefight started. Nobody could say where the number came from. No official study had ever produced it. But every volunteer who saw it understood what it meant. He was signing up to spend the next 12 months carrying a 23-pound radio on his back through jungle so thick the canopy blocked out the sun. Strapped to that radio was a 3-foot steel antenna that rose above his helmet like a flag. Every man in his platoon knew what that antenna meant. So did every enemy rifleman watching from the tree line. On the 14th of November, 1965, the first major battle between American and North Vietnamese forces began in the Ia Drang Valley of Vietnam's Central Highlands. Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore's 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry Regiment, landed by helicopter at a clearing designated Landing Zone X-Ray. They had flown directly into the assembly area of 2 North Vietnamese regiments. As Charlie and Delta companies came in under fire during the afternoon insertion, one radio operator was hit before he could step off the helicopter. The door gunner beside him took a round. The pilot was wounded in his seat. But every rifle on the tree line had been aimed at the same man, the one wearing the box on his back, the one with the antenna sticking up above the elephant grass. He was not the first radio operator lost in Vietnam. He would not be the last. 8 months later, in July of 1966, during Operation Hastings near the demilitarized zone, Marine radio operators with the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines fought through some of the heaviest combat of the early war. North Vietnamese soldiers did not fire randomly into American formations. They identified targets by priority. The man with the antenna was always near the top of that list because of what the antenna represented. It was not a weapon. It was something far more dangerous. It was a voice. That antenna connected a single infantryman to every piece of American firepower within range. One call into the handset could bring a battery of 105mm howitzers onto a grid square in under 3 minutes. Another call could bring a pair of F-4 Phantoms loaded with napalm and high explosive. A third call could summon a medevac helicopter to pull a wounded Marine out of a rice paddy. Without the radio, none of that existed. Without the radio, a platoon of 30 Marines was just 30 men with rifles standing in the jungle. With the radio, that same platoon commanded more destructive power than an entire infantry battalion of the Second World War. The enemy understood this completely. The radio the Americans carried was the ANPRC-25. Every soldier and Marine who humped one through the jungle knew it simply as the PRC-25. It entered service in Vietnam in 1965, replacing the older and unreliable PRC-10 from the Korean War. The set weighed roughly 23.5 pounds with its battery. With spare batteries, the handset, the antenna, and the accessory bag, the full load pushed toward 40 pounds. Some operators who carried the optional long-range whip antenna and the Nestor encryption device reported loads closer to 54 pounds, all of it stacked on top of their weapon, ammunition, water, rations, and personal gear. A fully loaded radio telephone operator could be carrying over 100 pounds through 95-degree heat in terrain that would exhaust an unloaded man in an hour. But the weight was not the thing that got them noticed. The antenna was. The standard short antenna was a semi-rigid steel tape roughly 3 feet long, designated the AT-892. It gave the radio a working range of 3 to 4 miles. The long-range option was the AT-271 Alpha, a sectional whip that extended to nearly 10 feet. In open terrain, it could reach up to 18 miles, but a 10-foot metal pole rising above a man's head in the middle of a jungle patrol did something else entirely. It told every enemy observer exactly where the command element was. The radio telephone operator walked directly behind the platoon commander or the company commander. He had to. The officer needed the handset within arm's reach at all times. This meant that a single glance through a pair of binoculars or a rifle scope could locate 2 of the most valuable targets in the entire formation in one spot, the officer giving the orders and the man who connected those orders to the full weight of American firepower. Take both of them out, and the unit went blind. No artillery, no air support, no medevac, no communication with adjacent units or higher command. A platoon without its radio was a platoon fighting alone. On the 15th of December, 1967, near the village of Mai An in Bin Din province, a 22-year-old Specialist 4 named Alan James Lynch was serving as the radio telephone operator for Company D, 1st Battalion, 12th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division. His unit walked into an engagement with a numerically superior North Vietnamese force. The fighting was immediate and close. Lynch assessed the situation and fed his commander critical information that shaped the company's response. Then he saw 3 wounded soldiers lying in the open, exposed to direct enemy fire. He ran 50 meters across open ground through a wall of incoming rounds to reach them. He found a trench nearby, cleared it by taking out 2 enemy soldiers at close range, and then went back into the fire-swept area 3 separate times to drag his wounded comrades to cover. When his company was forced to withdraw under overwhelming pressure, Lynch refused to leave the wounded behind. Alone, carrying the radio on his back and a rifle in his hands, he defended that trench for 2 hours against repeated assaults. He stopped them just short of his position, using his rifle and a single grenade. He accounted for 5 enemy fighters. Then he crossed 70 meters of open terrain 5 more times to move the wounded to a more secure position before locating a friendly unit to assist with evacuation. President Richard Nixon presented Alan Lynch with the Medal of Honor on the 4th of May, 1970. His citation identifies him explicitly as a radio telephone operator. Lynch survived. Many others did not. On the 7th of August, 1969, during Operation Idaho Canyon north of Vandergrift Combat Base in Quang Tri Province, Private First Class Bruce Wayne Carter was serving as a radio operator with Company H, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, 3rd Marine Division. His unit came under heavy fire from a superior North Vietnamese force. A brush fire separated the lead element from the rest of the squad. Carter, pinned down under crossfire, stood in full view of the enemy and delivered accurate fire that forced them to pull back, allowing his fellow Marines to regroup. As he led them away from the approaching flames, a hostile grenade landed between him and the men behind him. Carter did not hesitate. He threw himself on top of the grenade and absorbed the full force of the explosion with his body. He was 19 years old. His mother received his Medal of Honor posthumously. In November of 2020, more than 50 years after his sacrifice, Bruce Carter was reinterred at Arlington National Cemetery. The pattern held across every major engagement of the war. During the Battle of Hue in February of 1968, John Olson, a photographer with the Pacific edition of Stars and Stripes, spent 3 days embedded with the 3rd Platoon of Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. One morning, the platoon pushed forward through narrow alleys and tree-lined streets toward the tower above the east gate of the citadel. They moved at a half-crouch into a courtyard. They did not make it across. 3 enemy rockets crashed into the yard. The radio operator took the full force of one blast. Several other Marines were wounded beside him. A Navy corpsman ran out to help the fallen and was shot in the legs. Another Marine scrambled into the open to reach them, and a sniper put a round through his neck. Within minutes, 9 men were pinned inside a vacant villa. 3 of them were wounded, and the radio that connected them to everything, artillery, air support, medevac, reinforcements, was gone. In the jungles around Khe Sanh and along the demilitarized zone, the stakes were even more extreme. Small reconnaissance teams of 6 or 8 men operated deep behind enemy lines, sometimes days from the nearest friendly unit. Everything depended on the radio. It called in extraction helicopters when contact was made. It brought suppressive fire onto enemy positions. It confirmed the team's location so friendly artillery would not land on top of them. If the radio went down, there was no extraction. There was no rescue. There was nothing. On the 5th of February, 1970, Corporal Charles T. Sexton, a Marine radio operator with 3rd Force Reconnaissance Company, earned the Navy Cross for his actions in the A Shau Valley. On those missions, the radio operator was not just a target. He was the only reason anyone on the team could survive contact at all. If you found this worth your time, subscribe. I cover the forgotten tactics and untold survival stories of war every week. But the enemy had a second strategy, one far more sophisticated than simply trying to eliminate the man with the antenna. and when the Americans finally discovered it, the revelation was devastating. From the earliest days of the war, senior American commanders had dismissed the possibility that the North Vietnamese could intercept their radio communications. The warning signs had been there for years. Before the 1st Cavalry Division even deployed to Vietnam, the Army Security Agency monitored pre-deployment training and documented 11,000 communications security violations. 11,000. The violations included transmitting unit positions in the clear, using predictable call signs, failing to rotate frequencies, and sending operationally sensitive information without encryption. Major General Harry W.O. Kinnard, commander of the 1st Cavalry Division during the Ia Drang campaign, waved it all aside. He stated flatly that even if the enemy could intercept American transmissions and understand English well enough to interpret the messages, American movements were too fast and too immediate for intercepted intelligence to be exploited. He was certain the enemy lacked the sophistication to use anything they overheard. He was wrong. Completely and catastrophically wrong. On the morning of the 20th of December, 1969, a scout from the 1st Brigade, 1st Infantry Division, discovered a long wire antenna concealed in the trees of the old Michelin rubber plantation, northwest of Saigon. The antenna led to an underground bunker complex hidden beneath the plantation floor. After a brief firefight, 12 enemy personnel were captured along with all of their equipment, training materials, and logbooks. The unit was identified as Alpha 3, a platoon of the North Vietnamese Army's 47th Tactical Reconnaissance Battalion. The logbooks were written in fluent English. They contained detailed records of intercepted American radio transmissions, annotated with call signs, unit identifications, sender names, grid coordinates, and tactical analysis. Ambush sites, artillery schedules, troop movements, airstrike warnings, and operational plans had all been recorded, catalogued, and forwarded up the chain. The collection guidance inside those logbooks flagged transmissions from forward air controllers, artillery observers, command and control elements, and even press correspondents as high-priority intelligence targets. The captured documents noted that American units rarely changed their call signs or frequencies, and that senior officers who acted as their own radio operators gave long, detailed transmissions that revealed far more than they should have. The Alpha 3 logbooks identified the units they had been monitoring. The targets included the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment and elements of the 1st, 25th, and 1st Cavalry Divisions. When military intelligence agencies briefed General Creighton Abrams, the commander of Military Assistance Command Vietnam, in early 1970, his reaction was immediate. "This is terrible," he said. "They are reading our mail, and it has to stop. Get the word out to every division and corps commander." The implications were staggering. The man with the antenna had been targeted from the beginning, yes. But the enemy had also learned something far more valuable. A living radio operator broadcasting in the clear was worth more than a dead one. Every unencrypted transmission from every radio telephone operator in the field was feeding the enemy a continuous stream of American intentions, positions, and vulnerabilities. The antenna was not just a target marker, it was a broadcast tower, and the enemy had been listening to every word. American forces adapted, but slowly and imperfectly. Radio operators learned to bend the short antenna over their shoulder and tuck it under their harness to lower the silhouette, trading range for concealment. They hung machetes, claymore bags, and smoke grenades over the radio to break up its distinctive rectangular profile on their backs. Officers stopped saluting in the field and removed visible rank insignia so snipers could not identify the command element. Radio operators and their officers spread their interval on patrol instead of walking side by side. Communications security procedures were tightened. Call signs and frequencies were rotated more often. Shackle codes and authentication tables were enforced. The technological fix was the AN-PRC-77, fielded beginning in 1968. It was nearly identical to the PRC-25 in size and weight, but it replaced the older radio's single vacuum tube with a transistor, and more importantly, it could run the Nestor voice encryption system, designated TSECKY38. With Nestor engaged, anyone intercepting the signal heard only scrambled noise. But the encryption device was heavy, it degraded audio quality, and it shortened the radio's effective range. In the field, where every pound mattered and every lost yard of range could mean the difference between reaching a fire support base and broadcasting into empty air, many units left it behind. Most tactical radio traffic in Vietnam, from the first deployment in 1965 through the final withdrawals, stayed in the clear. The intercept capability had likely shaped the war long before anyone proved it. At Ia Drang in November of 1965, enemy monitoring of 1st Cavalry Division radio traffic may have helped the North Vietnamese attack Lieutenant Colonel Moore's battalion as it landed piecemeal at Landing Zone X-Ray. More critically, enemy forces later ambushed the 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry on its march to Landing Zone Albany, catching the columns strung out along a narrow trail. 155 Americans were killed in a single afternoon, with more than 100 others wounded. The column was nearly destroyed. The question of how the enemy positioned themselves so precisely was never fully answered during the battle. 4 years later, the Alpha 3 logbooks offered a chilling explanation. The men who carried those radios understood something that no technical manual ever captured. The radio was simultaneously the most important and the most dangerous object in the field. It was the reason artillery came when you needed it. It was the reason a helicopter would fly into a hot landing zone to pull out your wounded. And it was the reason a sniper's first round was aimed at your back. Radio telephone operators were hand-picked. They had to be calm under fire, fluent with map coordinates, capable of calling fire support with precision, and able to assume effective control of the unit if the officer beside them went down. At night, the radio operator rotated watch with the commanding officer, the platoon sergeant, and the medic. He slept with the handset against his ear. He was the first man awake when a transmission came in, and the last man to rest when the net finally went quiet. The job carried real status among the men who understood what it meant. It also carried a burden that did not end when the tour was over. Alan Lynch came home to Illinois. He went to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs and spent decades helping other veterans navigate the system that was supposed to take care of them. He established a non-profit foundation in his own name. He still speaks at memorial ceremonies and military events, carrying the weight of what happened near My An the same way he once carried that radio through Binh Dinh province. Bruce Carter's mother, Georgie Carter Krell, worked as a receptionist at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Miami that bore her son's name. She spent years ensuring his memory was preserved, and she fought to have him moved to Arlington, where he now rests among more than 400,000 of the nation's honored fallen. The men who survived a full tour as a radio telephone operator came home with ruptured discs, compressed spines, and knees that never worked right again. The radio weighed 23 pounds. The batteries weighed more. The total load bent a man's frame over 12 months of daily humping through mountains and rice paddies and triple canopy jungle in heat that could drop a man without a pack. But the weight they carried in their bodies was not the weight that stayed. The weight that stayed was knowing that every step they took with that antenna on their back made them the first man to be found, the first man to be aimed at, the first man the enemy wanted gone. And knowing, after the Alpha 3 logbooks were captured and the truth came out, that every word they had spoken into that handset had been heard by someone they could not see, recorded in a language they did not expect the enemy to speak, and used to position forces that would try to wipe out their friends. The 5-second number on the chalkboard was never a real statistic. No official study ever isolated radio telephone operator casualties from general infantry losses. The number was instructional folklore, a piece of dark classroom theatre designed to make a volunteer understand exactly what he had signed up for. But the men who carried the radio did not need a statistic to know the truth. They lived it every day they walked, point on a frequency the whole jungle was listening to.